All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our 6th general meeting for UMN Energy Club. Very happy to have you all here now that we are well into October. So if you haven't signed in, make sure you go ahead and fill out the sign-in form there, but we'll go ahead and dive right in. For everyone's, for full disclosure, we are recording this meeting. If you'd like to use a virtual background or if you'd like to mute your camera, you can do that as well, but we would love to see your faces. So if you have any concerns or questions, please send us an email or leave a message in the chat. A couple of announcements. We have our last scheduled volunteering event for the semester next weekend on Saturday, October 24th for 3 hours in the morning. This one is right on campus, so I'd encourage anyone who's able to come. We have, I believe as of now, 6 spots left. So definitely if you're interested, please come and join us. We would love to have everyone. Masks and social distancing will be required. If you have any questions about safety or any other concerns, please, again, feel free to let us know by sending us an email. We also are planning to have a Zoom call with the folks from the main energy plant. According to policy, we can't have an in-person tour there, but they will be sharing a lot of information about like where we get energy on our campus, how it's generated, how the energy is used. And I've been to the facility before, and it's a really interesting talk. The folks there are really friendly and happy to share all of their knowledge. So if you're able to make it to this meeting, we will definitely, you'll see it in our newsletter and also on our calendar once it gets scheduled. But please look out for that. And then I'm working on getting stuff on our website for our tour of the Thompson Center for Environmental Management last week, which was a lot of fun. We had a small group learn a whole bunch of things about chemical waste and all sorts of other fun facts. And we got to see the facility, which was super neat. So if you're interested in that, or if you'd like to attend other tours, feel free to fill out that Z link so that we can try to accommodate everyone's schedules. Finally, there's a conference coming up just next week, actually. It's crazy that's right around the corner. But it's the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. They're having their virtual global conference. UMN students can attend for free. So, use the discount code that you can see on your screen here if you're interested in going. I'm super excited about some of the keynotes, so I'd encourage you to go if you have the time. And, over the course of the next month, and of course, through the semester, we're going to continue this kind of alternating pattern between chats and speaker series. So whatever you're interested in, we're covering a wide range of topics over the course of the semester. So whatever kind of sparks your interest, please, we would love to have you join us for those meetings as well. Now introducing our speaker for today, Joanna Esther Schneider is a product development engineer with 3M, and she's done extensive work in the sustainability space. If you're interested in hearing more about her work, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself. And I will also stop sharing here so that you can put your slides up. Still on mute, Joanna. Joanna, I think you're muted. I cannot hear you.
I'm totally muted.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries.
I was just trying to, so this is the first time I've presented in Zoom. So I'm just kind of figuring out what's going on.
Okay. We're all learning the ropes. It's no problem.
Oh man, I know. So corporate America, we use Microsoft Teams. And it's actually pretty good. Okay, you're seeing a PowerPoint screen, right? Okay, so I've got dual screens. So if I'm looking at my slides, that's what I'm looking over there for. And then here's my camera. So thank you for having me. Let's make this more of, there's not that many of you and that's totally fine, but interrupt me whenever you have questions. This doesn't need to be a formal thing. So I don't know, is there a hand raise or do you guys just go off mute and speak up?
Yeah, I think if you want to go ahead and unmute yourselves, that works. If you want to raise your hand, I have the participants panel open. But also just like dump your questions in the chat as you have them, and we can just kind of filter through.
You see that? Because I don't actually see the chat.
Yep, I can take a look at the chat, and then I can pose questions when we're kind of at a pausing point.
Okay, and are you all engineering students or science of some type?
Most of us.
Do you have a few outliers? What are the outliers?
I'm an English major.
Oh, great. Anyone else? Everyone else science? Okay. All right, so I am not an expert in life cycle assessment. I have dabbled in it through corporate America, and I think it's really interesting. I'm a data-driven person, so it really makes sense to me. So I have a focus on life cycle. There we go. Okay, so I'm from the Twin Cities. I had a very regular upbringing in the Midwest. With lots of extended family all around. I come from a huge Catholic family, so that was me. I went to undergrad. It was a toss-up between music, science, and math, and I hadn't decided what to do until I was in the car driving to register for classes, and my dad kind of pushed me to, well, science and math, engineering, why don't you stick with music as a hobby? And I'm like, all right, that sounds good, Dad. So I went to Winona State, did the composite materials program there, and I wanted to do research at that point. So I applied for a PhD program at UC San Diego in the material science. It was great. It was a bio-nanotech lab, and it was really interesting, but it wasn't really what I wanted to do. So I stuck it out for a year, and then I was able to test out with a master's, which was awesome, because as a PhD candidate, you get a stipend. So it's essentially a master's that's paid for. So I would suggest that if you're at all interested there. So from there, I got an internship with Department of Defense, and I got to work on Coronado Naval Base, which is an island in San Diego. So that was great. And then I also got to spend some time at the Lawrence Livermore National Labs, which is a Department of Energy lab. And then my husband, with my boyfriend at the time, he had gotten laid off. He was with me in San Diego, and so we moved to the Bay Area, and there's no like government presence in the Bay Area anymore. So I had to quit, and I found a job with the Silicon Valley startup company. So I was number 9 of 17. It eventually folded, but I learned a lot from that experience, and it was really interesting. So then I got married, moved back to Minnesota, kind of the standard, bought a house, got a job, got a dog, had kids, and then moved out of the city. So there's my 2 kids there. This bike is actually pretty fun. It's a 3-person on here. It was inspired by a vintage photo of Schwinn, the guy who made Schwinn bikes, and they used to bike around like that. So. All right, so a little bit more about me. I've always loved being outside. As a family, we went camping every other weekend. I like to garden, and I don't discriminate about what type of gardening. Landscaping, I have a little mini rain garden in my front yard that I'm working on expanding, and I have adopted a rain garden too. And then my neighbor has a really large part of land behind her house that she lets me use for a vegetable garden too. So I have more gardens than I can handle, but it's fun to get out there. So also I buy used what I can, clothes, furnishings, home renovation stuff. We're in a 1920s house, so there's lots of that. I repair when I can. I have a big unfinished basement that I keep a lot of stuff in for reuse projects. I avoid donation centers if I can. I more try to use like Facebook Marketplace and, hey, take my stuff for free. I don't want you to have to spend any money at Goodwill for this stuff. I cook a lot from scratch. for personal reasons within my family and dietary restrictions, but also it's just a lot better for us. So yes, I have gotten into the sourdough because I couldn't find yeast when this all happened. So I've been keeping my sourdough going since March, which is pretty impressive. I've had to fight off some mold, but I'm still rocking it. Peanut butter is pretty easy. Yogurt, I've tried mayo, and that's kind of just a fail. The homemade mayos with olive oil, that's what makes it disgusting, I think. It curdles. It's gross. I did zero waste grocery shopping for about a year, but then I moved and had another baby, and I'm like, nope, I'm not going to do this anymore. So it was kind of fun, and I want to get back into it a little bit more after the pandemic dies down, but I feel a little guilty bringing my own containers into the co-op and filling them from the bulk bins. Yeah. So I stick with the plastic for now. And so that kind of all started by getting inspired by Bea Johnson. So she's Zero Waste Home in California, and she travels the world talking about how she keeps all her trash for her family in that little jar. And then more recently, I've become a board member of a local nonprofit, just kind of to balance out corporate America with something a little more local that I can work on, the area that I live in, and make sure that it's the Stillwater that I want it to be. So, all right, so since most of you are techie people, my 3M career. So I started when we moved back to Minnesota, I got a contract job in the renewable energy division. And since that was contract, that was just 5 months, I was really looking for more of a permanent job. But while I was there, I got to work on conductive adhesives for solar. And then when I got hired in, it was an infection prevention division, and it was supporting surgical drapes. And it was kind of interesting because I had no idea what a surgical drape was when I started. I thought it was like the hospital curtains that you close around like a patient bed, but it's not. It's like the blue stuff that goes over the patient that you cut into the patient, and it's controlling the infection there. So product engineer, and then from there, I just got involved in some of the standards committees, which was interesting to some degree. They're actually like generally really, really boring standards committees and meetings. You use ASTM test methods, so it's a bunch of people who talk about how to make that test method work and how to make it better. Amy is a medical specific one, and that one I was able to do more related to sustainability, so that one was more interesting to me personally, but just the whole process within ASTM and ISO was interesting to learn too. And then also within infection prevention, that's when I learned how to incorporate sustainability into my job, so appreciative of that. And then about a year ago, I moved into a new division called Commercial Solutions Division. So they have a lot of things for the commercial space, so buildings and that picture is a pretty good description. We've got a lot of stuff in that picture. So I started as a product development engineer on window films, but then this year I moved to a project manager role for a more broad portfolio. Okay. So ground on my definition of sustainability, honestly, I like the literal definition of just the ability to keep going. But I think it's really important to pull in the 3 pillars of sustainability, and I'm sure you guys have heard that like a million times, right? But so economic, social, and environmental. And I know the environmental piece is the fun part, but from a corporate perspective too, when like it's being in Stillwater and the businesses, it really is important to have all 3 of them together to have anything that's really sustainable. Okay, do you guys know what TerraCycle is? Yes, no. Okay, so it's a super interesting company. They take trash and make it into something else. If you haven't heard of them, you should look them up. They have a mildly inappropriate TV show that kind of chronicles like The Office. So it's kind of funny. And it's really interesting what they do. So what they say is that, almost everything is recyclable, but it's only not recycled because it's too expensive. So they recycle stuff like dirty diapers and cigarette butts and really non-conventional items. So it's really interesting what they do. So some of it is what he calls promotional. So it's like and by he, I'm talking about the CEO of the company. He says, instead of spending all your money on marketing, why don't you spend your money on a promotion like this, and then it's going to sell your product yourself. So like the shampoo bottles, they use the shampoo bottles to make a garden, a rooftop garden in New York. I think the other one with the chip bags is kind of gimmicky because it's going to end up as trash in like a little while anyway, but it's, you know, kind of fun for the kids. The operational ones are the ones I think are a little better because they're products that might last a little bit longer. So like the Tom's toothpaste, it will go back into their display cases. And the Expo markers, it's like the little holder for the markers or the eraser. So more recently, they've launched something called Loop. Have you guys heard of Loop? So it's really great. It kind of takes like your co-op that you can fill all your own containers for things like personal items, food, and cleaning products. And instead it ships them to your door. So they package them in packaging that is reusable, and so then you ship it back, and then you know, just it arrives at your door instead of having to go get it and tote around containers. So I think it's a different market than the people who are going to take their, you know, yogurt tub to the co-op and fill it with their bulk bins. But it's, you know, again, TerraCycle, I think they have really good business model, and they're pushing limits and doing things that are new. So I think that's interesting. And this is kind of TerraCycle segue into, I call it a newish trend because I know you all know about ocean plastics, but what TerraCycle did is if you start at the number 1 up here, so they get volunteers, so probably people like you and me who are paying for our own vacation, but we want to feel a little bit better about it. So we go to the beach and we pick up ocean plastic, and then they sort it, and then it gets regrinded and then put into shampoo bottles. So what does it say? It's like 25%. I don't know. So you know, the percentage is on one of the pictures, but so it incorporates ocean plastic in the bottle. So I think that's another interesting trend. Okay, so something completely different. Since I spent a lot of time in healthcare, this is a different approach than what TerraCycle is doing. So do you know what Kaiser Permanente is? A large healthcare company, kind of like the Health Partners of the West Coast, except like twice as big probably. So what they're able to do, because they're so big, is they put together environmentally preferable purchasing requirements. So I think it's by the year 2025, half of their products have to meet this criteria. So they've been able to drive the market. And one example I like to point out is the flame retardants. So none of their furnishings, like I think above and beyond this, they said, you know, beyond a certain point, none of our furnishings can contain flame retardants. And there wasn't really a market for furniture without flame retardants before they said that, but now it is. So they've been able to move the market by just being big enough to put together some really good goals. I think it's a lot harder for maybe some of the smaller organizations to move the needle like this, but if they get together, you know, you can kind of accomplish the same thing. Okay, so here's my plug for 3M. I have a couple 3M product examples. You guys haven't asked any questions. Just stop me if you have questions. Okay. All right, I like this one. Again,
Joanna,
yep.
Someone left a question in the chat. Olivia is asking, how is the transition from working with solar energy to working with the medical industry?
So completely different industries. I think, so when I was working in renewable energy, like just how you qualify products is so different. So from like a more industrial standpoint, I knew that I don't know that it's like necessarily a 3M product, but there was some solar panels that were starting on fire. And it's like, oh, it started on fire, you know, we need to fix that. And, you know, you fix it and you move on. You know, with healthcare, it's like you have to have 5 years of aging data and, you know, all the regulatory hurdles and all the documentation that goes into making a medical device. I mean, there's a reason that things take so long in the FDA. And I think and now that I'm back outside of medical, I do appreciate the rigor that goes into it, because you have a much more robust product and a more consistent product, and you're going to have fewer complaints. And so it was good probably to start where I did and then get into medical, and now I kind of have that mindset of understanding how to properly document and maintain a product, launch and maintain. Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
Technology-wise, they're different, obviously. I think like the surgical drapes, you would never think that that would be like a composite material, but it's a non-woven with a polyolefin extrusion coat. So technically, it's also a composite material. So, I mean, if you think about from just a material standpoint, they're all materials, and they just have some different properties that you're looking for in different customer markets. So I've never been one that's really been like connected to the product that I support. I know some people really are, but for me, they're just all products, whether it's a pen or a surgical drape or a, F-18. Sorry, I kept talking over you. I think you were going to say something.
No worries. I was just going to say, I was just curious on just how that transition was viewed, because it is like two completely different fields. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I don't know if you guys are there, I applied to 100 3M jobs before I got the one interview. So it didn't matter what it was, I was going to take that job. And I would say that is a lot easier to transition once you have that job. But the experience you get is really, really valuable, no matter what the market or the product is. Even if you hate your job for the first year, it's not a big deal from it.
Which one did you like better, like working with the solar panels or with the medical device stuff?
I was kind of excited to go to the surgical drape, because it's just such a simple technology compared to a solar panel. It's kind of like you can take a mental break. But then once you get into it, especially because of like the regulatory hurdles, we had so many challenges with something that you think should be as simple as just a non-woven with an extrusion coat. And nothing is simple. Everything is complicated in different ways. But obviously a solar panel has just a lot of pieces that have to go together, and then you're not coming from the same manufacturer each part. So there's just a lot more that you have to deal with there. Okay. So these ones have environmental attributes, but you don't necessarily need to do a life cycle assessment to understand what the environmental attribute is and see that it's a benefit. So this one I like to point out because it's a waterless hand scrub. So, you see surgeons that, you can learn a lot from Grey's Anatomy, but they have to scrub their hands for, I think it's like 5 minutes. And so with this product, you still have to do the water scrub and you have to clean under your nails in the morning, but every surgical scrub after that, you just do 3 squirts in each hand of this hand sanitizer, and then that's it. So if you can imagine, and then it kind of depends too on what your region is. In the Midwest, we're not really worried about running out of water, but in California, it's like a very real thing. They're always water strapped. So this kind of product really resonates a lot in those areas. And then again, there's no reason really to do a life cycle assessment when it's so obvious that you're saving that much water. So you can do a calculation on water savings. Another one, so this one, you guys will probably find more interesting than the hand scrub. So it's smog reducing roof granules. So it takes UV from the sun, like knocks down the smog gases, and then just deposits as nitrate salts. So it actually does reduce the smog. And this one, so for this presentation, everything is available online. There's no 3M confidential information here. And I couldn't find any reference to a life cycle assessment here, but I'm pretty sure we did one because I remember talking to someone about it. But so maybe it just was, again, that, it's so obvious that this is an environmental benefit that they didn't really need to quantify it with the life cycle assessment. All right, so this one's not 3M, but I just saw a talk from her like 2 weeks ago. I'm gonna turn on my light because it's getting really dark in here. Also, this is my closet. That's been my office since March. So behind my curtain is my clothes. Okay, so I saw this talk about 2 weeks ago, and so it's a woman who owns a secondhand shop in Minneapolis, and so that's already, you know, environmentally conscious having a secondhand shop. But she also, what I say, dabbles in LCA type calculations. Like she's not doing full LCAs, but she wanted to get an understanding of all the impact. So she looked at a paperclip, and so the little tiny paperclip, she says, has a big impact. She says that every year Americans buy 11 billion new paperclips. And honestly, I only remember buying like 1 pack of paperclips in my life. So I don't know if, like, who these paperclip people are. They're probably just corporations. But anyway, so that's the data that she found. And then I know it's super tiny down here, but it's like 5,500 tons of steel to make it. And there's something about like transportation. But the end message here is if you can measure the impact of that little tiny paperclip, you know, what's the impact of all of the other stuff that we use? So, you know, every little bit counts. Right, so moving on to life cycle assessment. Have you guys, you all know what LCAs are? Anyone not? Okay, so it's a
Raise your hand in the chat. We could do a little poll here if we want.
Yeah.
You've heard
Raise
of it?
your hand
Yes.
if you do. If I won't do it negative. Raise your hand if you know what an LCA is. The affirmative. Okay, about half. Okay, so it's a way to quantify the environmental impact of a product or process. They can assess impact over certain parts of a life cycle. So cradle is raw material extraction, grave is end of a product life, you know, in whichever way it gets disposed of. And then gate is also interesting because you can stop at certain gates. You don't have gate's a manufacturing gate. So if your your product has like 3 different processes, you can evaluate just, you know, one part of it. I like this image, except that it's not circular. So I've used it a few times. I probably need to make my own, but I like how it shows the extraction, transportation, refinement, and transport. And also they don't usually use airplanes for transport. That's way too expensive, which is also good because that's the worst for the environment. And manufacturing process, there's usually more than one. There's probably, you know, multiple there. But I do also like how there's an interconnection with the natural environment the whole way. So from raw material, but then also it feeds in every product and process has an effect on the environment. And that's what the life cycle assessment measures in a quantitative way. Okay, so inputs, they're very, very detailed, the inputs. It's everything for all of the raw materials, including the packaging that the raw material has, how the packaging is disposed of, transportation, type and distance, and then the energy used even to like incorporate the product into the process. So even like a forklift, you know, around a manufacturing plant, you have to capture that. Also like every manufacturing process, it's the same amount of detailed information, all of the energy and any inputs, the waste that the processes output, and transportation, and then any of the emissions to air and water. Okay, so the outputs, if you can kind of put them into a few different damage categories, which I think helps. So the one that we talk about most often is climate change or global warming potential, and that's when you hear about carbon footprint. So if you hear someone did a carbon footprint, they did a life cycle assessment, but they only looked at one impact category. So the other ones, there's a lot of them too: ecosystem quality, like acidification, ecotoxicity, eutrophication, ionizing radiation, and some of those also feed into human health also. And then there's some resources, which are, you know, land use and resource depletion, which is like fossil fuel depletion and stuff like that. All right, so how I learned about all that was because we got to use a life cycle assessment for the surgical drape that I was working on. So the project was moving from a polypropylene nonwoven to a PLA or polylactic acid or corn-based nonwoven. And so I didn't do the calculations of the life cycle assessment, but I had to capture all of the input data. So that was my responsibility. And when we finished the life cycle assessment, and we went from cradle to manufacturing gate because this was a replacement product, so there was no changes to once it left 3M's control, there were no changes, so you wouldn't necessarily capture to grave there. And then also end of life, there's can be limitations in the data that's available. So at the time, PLA, there wasn't data for end of life for PLA. So they would have had to model it like polypropylene anyway, so it would have came out as a wash. So the LCA calculations here were 18% fewer fossil resources and 10% less CO2. And so, you know, it's pretty understandable that if you're going away from polypropylene to a PLA that you're going to have less fossil fuel. And then CO2, there's a benefit for corn that it's a plant that's growing, so that helps too. Oh, I should also say that this product is no longer on the market for a lot of reasons, but I guess in general, I would say surgical drapes are kind of a commodity product. And, you know, if you think about sustainability with all three pillars, you know, if you're not really, it's not like customers are necessarily going to pay more for something that's more sustainable. So it didn't really resonate enough to sustain it as a product. So it went back to the old one. So it was really interesting that I started with this project, and then I also was responsible for switching it back to the original product. So it was a really interesting and humbling experience, but it's good perspective. All right, this one I think is awesome. Petri film plates. So these are like, you know, you do your handprint and you see how much, how dirty you are. So the plates, these are the traditional ones, but 3M has what they call Petri film. So I know they did a full life cycle assessment for this, and mine was pre-infographics. If you guys remember life before infographics, I think infographics are great. But like 80% less water, I'll say the real numbers, 76 energy, 66, and so really, really amazing difference. And you can see just in the amount of material that would be used to go from Petri plates to Petri film. So it's a big difference. Okay, totally switching gears again because healthcare related. I got to meet someone, a professor at NYU, Cassandra Thiel. She studies life cycle assessments of surgical procedures. So it, you know, it's not always just a product. So her life cycle assessment includes all the products that come in for the surgery. She actually compared like different ways, not on this one that I'm showing, but different ways to do the same surgical procedure, like with robotics or an open surgery, and what the environmental impact is comparatively for the different surgeries. So I think it's fascinating. But what I'd like to point out with this one is how it kind of mirrors the reduce, reuse, recycle. So what she found, and again, this is carbon footprint, so it's just greenhouse gas, so it's not all of the impact categories. But if you just use less stuff, it's a 46% reduction in the carbon footprint. I'm going to ignore anesthesia because that's like a whole nother topic. So we're processing single-use devices. I have a slide on that next too, but that's a 9% reduction. So there's your reuse. And then it's kind of sad, but even if they recycled all the packaging, it was only a 1% reduction. So you think that, you know, you're recycling and you're, you know, doing awesome, but you know, you got to do your reduce, reuse first. So for processing single-use devices, again, this is a healthcare thing that you probably wouldn't know that they do. But they take devices that were, the manufacturer had intended them to be single-use, and that's what kind of FDA registration they got. And then they collected, and usually a third party then inspects them, sterilizes them, and becomes the end manufacturer in the FDA's eyes. So they have to get like new clearance that they are the manufacturer. So they've been doing this for quite a while now, and it avoids a lot of medical waste. So it's the benefit, and obviously it's a huge cost savings too. So. And I have seen like one case for a manufacturer was forced to offer a reusable product because a hospital said, well, I'm going to just, send yours to reprocessing. And they're like, oh, no, okay, we'll redesign it to make it reusable. So again, you have that leverage. Okay, so you're not always going to do a full life cycle assessment. And I have never done myself a full life cycle assessment. What I have used is this middle one called Sustainable Minds, and it's a cloud-based kind of more user-friendly tool to do a life cycle assessment. When I was searching for comparative ones, I found this one that's open LCA, and that looks like it's LCA data that's like doing a real life cycle assessment where you can put in all your inputs and get all your outputs and do a really good comparison. So in your guys' free time, I suggest you try that software and see what you can figure out. Then I also just wanted to, this one I found, this LCA calculator, they seem like it might be a little more similar to what I've used, Sustainable Minds, but it was a lot cheaper. So I think they had like a student version for like $70 a year or something. Okay, so I have a few examples of like within the last year of how I've used, a few months actually, Sustainable Minds at work. So in about 10 minutes, I can quickly do like a comparative assessment of how you can improve a product. So I'm just going to call this a HDPE thing. It doesn't really matter what it is, because when you're looking at a life cycle assessment, it's like the amount of material that you're talking about. So my reference here is virgin HDPE. It's not reused and it's incinerated for end of life. One concept I looked at was if you reuse this thing 12 times. Another one is if you source recycled polyethylene and you recycle it at end of life. And then the last one is just, again, your virgin polymer, but you recycle it. So this one kind of got a good, better, or best scenario here. So simply recycling it, it's a 30% reduction in CO2. If you source recycled and you recycle it, then it's an 85% reduction. And then if you use it 12 times, it was a 99% reduction in CO2, which is pretty awesome. So again, it's kind of your reduce, reuse, recycle hierarchy there. And something that I learned recently, I thought milk jugs would be like a circular economy story, that they'd get made back into new milk jugs, and they don't. They get made into lawn furniture. And so the lawn furniture, how long you're going to use it, I don't know, but then where does it go? It goes in the garbage. So that to me is a little sad. I feel like milk jugs should be able to be made back into new milk jugs. Okay, so another one is a film example. So this is LDPE with a silicone coating. And again, in about 10 minutes, I'm able to kind of show some differences in, what could we do different. So my reference here is, again, a virgin polymer, not reused, and then landfilled. And so it'll change the numbers if your reference is landfill versus incinerate, just because those have different impacts. So if you recycle it, it's a 70, if you source recycled, it's a 77% reduction. Reuse, if you just reuse it one time, a 50% reduction. If you lightweight it, as you see how these numbers totally match up. So if you lightweighted it more, you get even a bigger reduction. Again, here's the sad thing. If you recycle it, it's kind of a wash. And then if you incinerate it, it's a lot worse. Okay, so now I've got some quizzes for you guys. Okay, so what has the lower environmental impact, using a dishwasher or hand washing dishes? So I don't know if we don't do this. How about raise your hand if you think it's a dishwasher? it's the dishwasher. I say, but it depends. So I personally hand wash a lot of dishes, so I take offense to this one. But I think it depends on how I know it depends on it, because if you read the full life cycle assessment that I've got down here, this assumes that you do your dishes by running the water continuously and then, like using your sponge. But I do it like your grandma does, and I fill my sink just a little bit, and then I use a washcloth, and then I just rinse a little bit. So I think if you do it that way, hand washing can be better. So it depends. A lot of times it depends. So this one captured a difference in energy usage, greenhouse gas, and water. So water is really, a big difference. Okay, next one. All right, so this one you have 3 options. So the raising hand's not going to work as well, but we'll just ignore the hybrid. We'll go either way. Okay, so raise your hand if you think.
I think, Joanna, if we want to like do multiple options, there's a couple of different things here. So we could say like yes for conventional vehicle, no for the electric vehicle, and then the go slower option for the hybrid vehicle. If we want to, okay. So just like A, B, or C with the green, red, or gray buttons.
Oh wait, I have to do something?
No, just for all of our audience.
Okay. I don't see anything happening. Are you guys done? Drum roll.
Okay, so I see there's 4 people think that it's hybrid. 4 people think that it's the electric vehicle. 5 people think it's the electric vehicle. And no one said the conventional vehicle.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like hands down, it's the electric vehicle. There's a lot of graphs here, but if we focus this one is air pollutants, and it's really hard to read it, but blue is conventional and red is electric. So it's like hands down. This one down here is a cost comparison, which I think is interesting to factor that in. And then, if you actually read the full life cycle assessment, they actually suggest you buy the hybrid because it's so much cheaper than the electric vehicle. And they say the reason they say that is because you don't see that much difference. They say you get a pretty significant benefit with the hybrid versus the conventional. And they say this isn't that much of a difference. So for the cost savings, they're like, you might as well just get a hybrid. I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's their conclusion. And I actually use some of these slides to present at my son's school, like a walkthrough about what is LCA. And so I got some of the parents heckling me. And with electric vehicles, it's all about the battery. So I'm like, no, they do factor the battery in right here. So that's this right here is the battery. It does get a pretty big hit. But the use phase, you're just not using gas anymore. So it is consumption of like tires, and there's other things, wear and tear on vehicles. So it's not like a freebie because you have an electric vehicle, but you're not using the gas.
There's a question in the chat from Valerie. They are asking, does the source of an area's electricity impact the environmental impact of an electric vehicle?
So I know it gets factored in if you do a life cycle assessment. I think in cases like this, because it's like nationwide, they're probably just going to choose what's like the most typical. But yes, it would, because I know for the surgical drape one of our plants was near a nuclear energy site, and you don't choose where you get your energy from. It's just whatever plant is closest to you. So we actually got a hit on the ionizing radiation because it was close to a nuclear power plant. And so you might get some benefit by not emitting as much CO2 from a power plant like that, but yes, it does. It depends on how you do the life cycle assessment, but yeah, it could matter. Next. All right, this is a good one. So single-use bags or reusable bags. So raise your hand if you think it's single-use. All right, so it's the reusable. There's a huge but that you have to use them and reuse them. So some of the LCAs, they do like an equivalency of like number of times you need to reuse it. This one, this is the plastic, the cheapo plastic bag is the red bar. So, you know, that's your baseline, and those are all ones all the way across, and then these are all your impact categories. And so then this shows you how many times you have to use it to equal it out. So it's like, yeah, you have to use it a lot of times. But I don't know about you guys, but I use my reusable bags, you know, every week when I go to the grocery store. So it's like 50 times a year. And I don't go through them very fast. I've had the same ones for a few years now, so don't lose them. Okay, this one's not as relevant to you guys because I'm assuming you don't have kids, but disposable or cloth diapers, it's kind of a hot button issue. So raise your hand if you think it's disposable.
Looks like there's no one.
So it's disposable. But then here's again the big but. So I think it all comes into how you wash them. So it's a 16% reduction if you wash in fuller loads or line dry. 40% reduction if you wash in full loads, line dry, and reuse on a second child. So I've had 2 kids and I have purchased cloth diapers, but being a working parent, I've never committed fully to cloth diapers because it is just more work. And also I would wash mine in with our regular laundry. So I'm sure they're not accounting for that because some people think that's super gross. But I did it. I tested it out on like with my husband's dress or white shirts, and he didn't notice. There's no smell. There's no stains. So I'm like, okay, well, if he didn't notice, then we're gonna just do this all the time. So, so I think if they would have factored that into LCA, it would have been different results. So, all right, here's a popular one. So raise your hand if you think it's the Beyond Burger. Totally the Beyond Burger. And I eat plant-based, but I don't exclusively. So I have a fence to the amount of ingredients in Beyond Burger. So I don't like this one. I wish the beef burger wasn't quite so bad, but it is really, really bad from an environmental standpoint. So I mean, yeah, it's hands down like water, land, greenhouse gas, energy. I mean, there's really no comparison. But yeah, my family can't eat them because of the ingredients anyway. So. All right, I think this is the last one. All right, so I don't remember how you said we can do it, but so it's mug, ceramic cup with lid, or paper cup.
Yep, so we can just use the first couple of options on the participants panel. Okay, so 2 people so far have said the ceramic cup with a lid.
Is the paper cup able to go in like organics, or does it have to be thrown away?
I think this is just regular thrown away.
Okay, so it looks like most people think it's the ceramic mug, and then there's a handful of people that think it's the cup with the lid.
Okay. So they say the mug. But the but here is use the dishwasher. And again, so I don't know if this would be, I think I did look, this one they said you use they assumed you use a half a liter of water to wash each cup. So that's not that much, a half a liter. So I would believe them this time that it's the dishwasher. So, so the mug with in the dishwasher is the orange. So it is definitely a lot lower. I don't know why the lid is so high, but the cup with lid is pretty high. Especially if they wash it by hand. It's not as bad, yeah, if dishwasher it. But cup with lid in the dishwasher is the yellow bar. And so then here again, they've got the number of uses comparison, or your break-even point. So paper cup is the green line, And so it's not too bad as long as you're using the dishwasher, either the cup with lid or the ceramic mug in the dishwasher, you get your break-even point like at 10 uses. So again, I mean, assuming you use it coffee once a day, so you basically have it in 2 weeks if you reuse your mug or cup. And then this one, so I found this just recently when I went to that Open LCA website. So I guess this is kind of your inspiration. This is what students have been able to do with that website, the Open LCA. So get in there and play with it. I don't know, can you make it an independent study, get some extra credit for it? I don't know, but I think it's pretty cool and pretty interesting. All right, so my final thoughts. Think global, act local, like I said, like the paper cup lady, little things add up. This one I think is really important because I have felt this way. You will feel discouraged if you have a strong connection to the environment, but you're not alone. So go ahead and be discouraged, but get back up again. I think it's really important to learn to understand people's perspective because then it's a lot easier to figure out how you can work together. Something I've learned is compromise, and sometimes it's best just to take the path of least resistance. Sometimes it feels defeating, but getting something done is better than getting nothing done. If you incorporate sustainability into your daily life, then it can become part of any job that you have. And like you saw with these life cycle assessments, there's not one way to be sustainable or make sustainable products. So let's not judge people. Let's just support each other, and then don't lose track of the things that are important to you. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joanna. Yeah, if there are any questions, feel free to paste them in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask your questions.
I have a question. I was wondering, during your current role, like how much of your time would you say that you get to spend where you actually feel like you're working on something sustainability related, and how much not so much?
Yeah, so fortunately and unfortunately, I'm working on something right now, but it's not, so I mean, if you think about how much time I have allocated in my day, it's a really small percentage that I'm supposed to be working on this, but it's taking up a lot more time. So it's the thing that I feel passionate about and is a lot more interesting to me. So I have to try to make time for it, and it can make life a little more stressful, but I don't know, keeps me going.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So, I can imagine that, while with your job at 3M, that they're kind of looking at what the market demand is for more sustainable products.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think that, like, as an employee or on the inside of the company, can you make arguments for shifting to a more sustainable manufacturing method or sustainable sourcing if, it looks up front like there would be a lot of investment, or that it doesn't look like it necessarily pay off? How can you kind of make the argument for a sustainable product to like put work into the design phase?
It's all about the money. So you can say it's all about the money in a couple ways. One, if you can, here's where you need to have some friends who are in marketing. If you can prove that people will pay more, or just you'll gain market share by having a more sustainable product, that's a win. And then the other thing is, a lot of times cost savings programs are also sustainability programs. So if you take a current product and you figure out a way to make it more affordably, you're also reducing the environmental impact. So that's why it's understanding people's perspective and changing the narrative to make it work for you. Like, hey, let's do a lightweighting project. Oh, it's going to save you, this much money every year. And then, also it's going to save, this much resources, environment.
Is 3M?
So I've spoken a lot and not been heard. And some people are more willing to listen than other people, but it's, you know, again, it's the don't get discouraged, keep fighting. And I see more people talking about it at 3M than they did like 5 years ago. So it's becoming more apparent that it's not like catering to a minority. It's like this, you know, this is the way that we're going, and we have to find a way to make every product more sustainable. So I do see it going that way, both that, and I would assume it's not just 3M. I would assume it's kind of more of an industry-wide thing. It's definitely nice to see that.
Awesome. Thank you, Joanna. I think Doug had something that he wanted to ask. Also, Doug, I think your microphone's a little weak, so if you could speak up a little bit, that might help.
Okay, just quick question. Is 3M still in the renewable energy or solar business?
So the renewable energy division was disbanded like, I don't know, maybe like almost 10 years ago now. And it was split up into several different divisions. And so they don't have solar panels. They were really big in backsheet. That was, you know, because 3M is a film manufacturer, they did really well with backsheet, but then again, it became commoditized, and they had to back out of that market. I think they still have some of like the wind turbines, like we saw in that little image that I had for renewable energy. So there's still some of it, and you know, where I was supporting tinted window films, that's something that came out of renewable energy division also. So there's still some of it, but it's not quite as big as, you know, when it was like 2008, I think, when it was really, really big.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there are no other questions, are there any other questions? Okay. Then I think we can go ahead and conclude this meeting. Thank you so much, Joanna, for your time and for sharing all of this. I definitely, like, I've done casual Googling with LCAs, but I've never like found all of these resources. So thank you for all of that. I'm sure a lot of us will be exploring those once we get through our crazy hell weeks of, you know, midterms, exams, and papers and such. But thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And yeah, if people want to reach you, you've put your email address on this last slide. I have a couple of closing announcements, so I'm just going to go ahead and reshare here. If you're not already following us on social media, please follow us on social media. We would love it. And then if you have any friends who might be interested in coming to some of our, you know, meetings later on this semester, feel free to share this Z link so that they can be added to our email list. I guess I can pull up the sign-in link. Here we go. Thank you everyone for coming. If you haven't already signed in, or if you kind of entered halfway through the meeting, make sure to fill out the sign-in link. But thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you again, Joanna, for your time.
Thanks everyone. Good luck with finals.
Thank you.